Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I am creating a dead body from a lot of parts here on the Pinehurst Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida, in the Extreme Studios. I've got these black and white set pieces that are incredible. And RDV from the Great Midwest is online. RDV, I'm trying to figure out how to raise a body. I figured because I saw these videos on TikTok and Twitter that I should be able to do it at home, right? Because if it's online, it works.
Be honest, we are creating a new body to replace the useless pixel.
Bigger, faster, stronger. I love that. That always goes through my head.
We could just have a corpse here and it'd be more active than Pixel.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the 1931 iconic film Frankenstein, and it's a movie that honestly, RDV, I know we've covered a lot of different Hammer films, we've done themes and stuff like that. I don't know that we've ever given this the extreme treatment before.
Yeah,
not this version anyway.
Yeah, this is Universal Horror. Which I've never done the Frankenstein or watched Dracula for that. That's why they're both in the pool. The Mummy, Pixel and I have reviewed before, along with the werewolf movie as well. But like I said, I'm probably gonna do another 3 on Tuesday. We're looking at probably Invisible Man, maybe even The Bride of Frankenstein, which will be the sequel to this movie. And I'll choose another one, but
another Universal though.
Yeah. I'm thinking about just doing a bunch of Universals, and then whatever doesn't make it from the other one, I'm gonna combine it with another Dracula and the Mummy again and the werewolf, and we'll see what's going on.
This is by far the biggest, far and away, crush the other two as far as the voting comes from the fans, because this is the fans vote. That's why we're doing it tonight. So for some reason I wanted to see it, so let's talk about it.
It's a first time watch for me. Now I understand why people like it, because
are you serious?
I've only ever seen the Hammer horror film with Christopher Lee as Frankenstein.
Gotcha.
Now I'll tell you now, I will be comparing the two because there's a lot of stuff that I liked in the Hammer one, and there's stuff I liked in this, and there's the ones I didn't like in either one of them.
Okay.
That being said, Vincent Price sucks as Victor Frankenstein. Compared to this actor, Colin Clive.
Who? Vincent Price? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I hear what you're saying now.
Yeah. Vincent Price is a good actor, but Colin Clive fits the role. Now, I'm annoyed that they didn't call him Victor. They called him Henry. They changed it for whatever reason. They're adapting Mary Shelley's a story, and they called it Henry Frankenstein. And so that kind of annoyed me. But Colin Clive, only he's probably around 31 here. Dude, the dude is awesome as Dr. Henry Frankenstein.
He's creepy. He's a creepy looking bastard, isn't he? Seriously,
he's good looking, but when he does deranged, he does good deranged.
Yes.
Not only this, the guy was a raging alcoholic. So during the filming of this and a lot of his other movies, he was drunk off his ass, and still remember his lines. And they had to prop him up, and you could tell by the way the look he lives. They probably weren't using that much makeup in this for him, because he looked so bad, like his liver was shot.
Let me address that, because that's a key thing to this film. This is based off of set pieces and the way you would do stuff. It's not the way you would typically film. It's how some filming was being done at that point. Again, this is 1931. This is almost 100 years ago. So it's very surrealistic with the images and the backdrop and stuff. That's why when we've covered some other things in the 50s and 60s, when we go, oh, that's really cool looking scene, and it's a throwback to this or that. It's like, well, this is kind of where it comes from. These are all just a couple set pieces, but it still looks good with the shadows and the black and white and everything. And to your point, the makeup for stage is different than film. And so here it does kind of make it seem a little odd, doesn't it?
The atmosphere, everything. There's literally the castle. You walk in, there's about 2 rooms you see, but when they come in the door, they have to walk in. They have to walk up these long steps here, which is really cool because it adds into the movie. Because when this is Boris Karloff as Frankenstein, when he walks, the way he moves his hands, and his face, his little creepy smirk, this guy is scary. He is, because at first you're like, okay, what do I know of Frankenstein? Oh, he likes butterflies. He's like this. He's a happy guy. But in this one, he's a murderer. He's a murderer. He's got an Abby normal brain. And so I kind of like this, currently right now, for those who are tying into comic books, there is through Man Cave, there actually is a new Frankenstein book, and the whole synopsis of the story, each issue shows you where each body part came from and who it belonged to and stuff. And you're following this boy who's basically trying to like stop Frankenstein, and it is spot on awesome. So check that out. That's currently a comic books, or go to your comic book store, look for Frankenstein. But like I said, this was just really good from the graveyard scene, the very beginning. Everybody, and I looked up, man. Every character in here, little Marie and all the other kids, are all dead. They aged out. Marie, and there's another girl, a village girl, the one who they are basically like they died in their 70s, back in 1999 and 2003. That they're both born in 1928, 24. I was just like, dang. It's like so not even the kids are alive in this movie. This is a 93-year-old movie. So I'm done watching this. The way they did everything. Can you imagine being 12 years old in 1931? And
you're old enough to smoke and work the mines or the farm. So yeah, why not?
I'm saying this was a big deal to be a kind of part in a movie like this, because the stock market collapsed in 1929.
Mm-hmm.
So you're 2 years into depression. And so this was the atmosphere, everything was done well. We're talking about characters that kind of annoy us in our old man review of the TV show episode. Check that out. The girl who basically plays Frankenstein's fiance is really annoying in this too. And not only that, his Baron Frankenstein, Frankenstein, his dad he's like a snookered old man. He might as well
he's there.
Yeah.
He's just there.
He's just there, and he's nonsense. What does he do in this castle all day? He's like, well, Frankenstein's 30 years old, guy. Leave him alone. It's so there's a lot of cool characters in here too. We bring up that Colin Clive, May Clarke, is his fiance, Boris Karloff, is Frankenstein. But oh my gosh, when we get to Fritz, Dwight Frye's character, phenomenal in here. He is just a little shit, and he's basically Igor, you call him, in some of the other films. And his job is basically in there to help the Dr. Frankenstein, and then he breaks into Frankenstein's old mentors, and he breaks into his lab, the college. He drops the brain because he gets spooked. So he has to grab the abnormal one, and he goes in there. He doesn't tell Victor Frankenstein until it's too late. So then we basically in the middle, they're just about to bring the Frankenstein's monster to life. They're in the middle of this rainstorm. We have Dr. Waldman, and then we have what's her name? We have Victor Moritz, basically John Boles' character and Edward Van Sloan's character show up with May Clarke and then Elizabeth, and they're like, "Oh, we need to see you. Let us in." Listen. He's like, "We're in the middle of something." And like, "Go away," and like, so he lets him in. And so then he's like, he brings him up the stairs, and I love it because he's like, he is so obsessed with this. They come upstairs. They're gonna come inside the room there, and then he's like, before you come in here, are you sure you want to come in here? It's like once you see, you cannot see it. So they come in, and while he's attending to Elizabeth and the other guy, stupid doctor, professor guy comes in there, and Victor's like, "Get away from that, you little," and he basically, and I love how Henry basically pulls him away. He's like, "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" Like everybody is like so freaking nosy, touching everything. He's like, "Sit down, shut up." They raise the monster up, raise them up there, electricity. You don't see electricity spark the body at all, which I was kind of like disappointed about that. But I was like, I wanted to see, because would you see all the humming machines, the sparking stuff, but you never see like lightning. Like, that would have been like in a future movie, would have been like the CG.
Of course.
Yeah. But he brings it down, the arm starts moving. It's great. And like I said, throughout the whole movie, it's like this. You see the monster, and you're like, Well, maybe the monster's kind of innocent. It said like those abnormal brains was a criminal. We're led to hold that before, but like from the introduction, from like they have the guy telling the story is like it's like and these guys in front of the stage production, in front of the actual the stage background, the curtains up. He's like, but I tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. And you turn away now if you're scared. It's okay, go. But and they tell the story, and like I said, it's just wonderfully done. Yeah. And from all the monster movies that we've reviewed on the channel, with either you and I or Pixel, this is absolutely my favorite right now.
Well, I tell you a couple things I want to mention about it too. Going back, there's been different levels of what you can and can't do in terms of regulations and stuff, and I don't really get too nerdy and all that. Frankly, I don't know them all, and I don't really care. When we talked about The Old Man season 2, episode 4 before this live, I had mentioned a comment about how, I personally love violence, but it's got to have a reason. It can't just exist on its own, and otherwise it's comedy. And it's like that with a lot of things. And the thing that really struck me about this, because it's been some years since I've watched this. I typically are watching Hammer films or prioritize other things on the Halloween season that I want to see, because there's too much out there that I want to check out or rewatch. And for me, I was really struck by how well the cinematography, and older TV that like I grew up on as a kid in the 70s, as a teenager in the 80s, I think the aspect ratio was 4:3, like 4 units this way, 3 units that way. So it's the square box, right? Things are a little different now. I always love Carpenter's white, 235:1 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what's going on here, but the point I'm making here is with the black and white and the set pieces and all that, you get a lot of what these medium to close in shots. So it's great because you almost think a lot of these actors, that a lot of them started off in vaudeville and came over, they have to be more expressive on stage. That here they have to learn to kind of tone it down. But I always remember people made fun of the Universal ones as not being scary, being kind of goofy, and all the good stuff comes after it. Well, and I would strongly disagree, because this movie is creepy from the get-go. It's got a very minimalist, if any, score to it. So you're just sitting there watching the thing unfold. And when you sit there and you tell yourself, yeah, this guy's a sick fuck and he does a good job at it. And then all these people come in, when they start taunting the monster with fire and it moves around, these are all practical effects, right? And let's go straight to the point. The monster, to me, still looks very fucking good. He looks very scary. He looks like he should be. Yeah. It's not like, oh, wow, he's really good, he's jacked, he's whatever like that. No, his body looks indifferent and his face is disgusting. They've still nailed it. You and I did the Frankenstein Chronicles with Sean Bean a few years ago. We reviewed that. That was very entertaining, but it's very glossy. It's very sexy. It's very Penny Dreadful-ish, which we've also, I think, reviewed and talked about.
I'd say
this one is dark and morose, and I love it.
I've never watched Penny Dreadful because it looked too weird to me. It looked too glossy. No, it looked like for Penny Dreadful, it looked like Once Upon a Time to me. That's why.
No, it's good. It is good.
It's like the monster version. This, I can understand why people say it's kind of corny, and because there's a scene where he meets little Maria, the little villager girl, and she's got her holding her cat, and and she's sitting down by the water there, and she's throwing the lily heads in there, and she has them thrown there too. So then, what does he do? He pulls a Rooster Cogburn, throws her in the water.
Cogburn. I'm just saying, everyone makes fun of all these things, but that's horrific. It really, really is.
It is. But the way he's smiling with her, he's acting with her, he reminds you of Herman Munster at that scene right there. So it looks kind of goofy.
But again, before Herman Munster. So here's another thing too. I want to mention, because it's extremely important. You and I for 5 years now, and Pixel for 3 or 4 of those years. Generally, you and I have talked a lot of stuff from the 80s and 90s. We talk a lot about things, how things have changed, and how like your generation and his generation and our viewers' generation sees things. One thing about Disney here in Central Florida, we always say don't mess with the mouse. But one thing that they were very prescient on doing back in the 30s, I believe, if I'm correct, off the top of my head, they took a lot of stuff that was in the public domain. Like, and I'm not saying they use this specifically, but there's a lot of stuff in there, like Dracula, like Frankenstein, Sherlock Holmes, Edgar Allan Poe, all this great literature and works of different types that you can make movies on. And I thought Universal did such a phenomenal job, for whatever reason, to go, you know what? Let's make something off here that we can make a bunch of sequels after. Now, you can argue whether you like them or if the other ones after them get cheesy and the quality of them, all them. But I thought they hit a home run with most of these, because I thought that defines monster movies. You can say, well, Nosferatu was before that or this or that. You know what? don't give a rat's ass. This is what it means around the world. And I still think Universal dropped the ball when The Mummy with Tom Cruise came out and was kind of half a film, and it wasn't specifically one type of film, because I still think the beauty of Frankenstein and Dracula and Wolfman, it is all originates with us, but you can still tell it kind of dark. And this movie, when you watch it, it's not the joke. And that's how tremendous Young Frankenstein is as a comedy from the 70s. It's one of the funniest movies of all time, because they understand this movie so good to make fun of it. Like when he goes to throw the girl in the comedy movie, his eyes just kind of look at the screen to you and nothing happens, right? It's like breaking the fourth wall that way, because you know what he did in the first one, because it was so horrific. And this movie did gangbusters. And Universal, man, why did you drop the friggin' ball? This is still anybody that's in a film, you've got to watch all these horror movies from Universal, period.
I was gonna say more like I didn't give a shit about Tom Cruise being in The Mummy. I thought it was a bad choice for Tom Cruise to be in anything like that. Part of their
dark universe, and they're reaching back to the well, and they could.
So it wasn't part of it. It was it was them saying F you to the Dracula Untold and said we're gonna reboot with Tom Cruise. That's what it was, and it still flopped.
You and I did like Dracula Untold for sure.
Dracula Untold
very solid.
It set up a really good thing. He actually was a good Dracula. You know, it's like some people prefer the Dracula from with Gary Oldman. You know, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I wasn't a fan of that. You know, I liked more of the one we did, Dracula Untold. For whatever reason, like I love the fact they brought it into a modern setting towards the end, and they couldn't build it right off of there. You know.
True.
Where he was, because he was an anti-hero. He wasn't a villain. And I guess people wanted Dracula to just be a main villain. Then go watch Monster Squad. You know, it's like,
the beauty of this story is that it's man versus nature. You always lose. You have to lose. The thing about Frankenstein, I like the fact that he honestly, when you watch this movie, to me, he's not a sympathetic character. And I got so tired after the 80s, everybody making vampires being, you know, understood or sympathetic, or we got to get their backstory. I don't fucking need that. It's stupid and it's ridiculous, and it doesn't do anything. Because you got to have a good and bad guy. So the whole point here is don't fuck around with Mother Nature, and you won't get fucked with. Bad things won't happen. You won't upset the balance or whatever you want to call it. But the thing is we see that trend and it hasn't continued. Everybody's got to, like, you know, sexify the bad guys, whether they're serial killers in the 90s or 140-pound vampire waifs and all that. It's like there's nothing scary about it. And this movie, though, when they set it off, it's really about these are the consequences for bad decision making, and here's the effects it has on you as a human being. That's a simple story that all of us know.
In 1931, these were considered more scary compared to what we are today. Today, slashers are the new scary movies, you know, Michael Myers and Jason and all that stuff, you know, the gore, you know, Freddy. Like, this was horrific as it was, you know, the thought, you know, of using galvanization to bring back a monster and, like, inhabitants being loose. The way, talk about this, like, the monster ends up, like, they realize after it kills Fritz, because Fritz goes in there, and Fritz gets what he deserves. Fritz was a little piece of shit. He goes in there, he tortures, Frankenstein with the fire stuff, you know, and can harass him. Frankenstein hangs him, or the monster hangs him inside the thing itself. And they realize they have to get him out in order to kill the monster. They're gonna inject him with enough basically medicine to kill him, and he does this. And you know, and they bring him up. They're gonna, and the guy, basically the professor tells him, he's like, what's his name? Professor Waldman says, hey, how about this? You leave here with your wife. You go get married. I'll clean up the mess here. Don't worry about it and stuff. Right. So while Frankenstein's going, you know, he's relaxed. He's spending time with Elizabeth. He's much better, and he's in higher spirit stuff. You realize that his, you know, what he did was crazy, and he shouldn't have done it, you know. And meanwhile, you know, Dr. Woolman's back there. He's like, okay, he's writing the book here. I'm gonna do a circumcision, dissection, you know, make sure everything like this, you know. And as he's doing this, you see the eyes fluttering on the monster. Yeah. And he gets up there, goes to cut into him. All of a sudden, the monster gets up, chokes him, and strangles him to death. And then he leaves the room, you know. And then there's reports of people seeing the monster. They in the middle of the wedding, the day of the wedding. They have it's like this old German town. Everybody's like celebrating and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Frankenstein goes and he after he kills the girl that drowns her, the father returns and in the village he's carrying the dead girl, which is rarely like wow, like shock value. He's carrying his dead 8-year-old 9-year-old daughter or whatever, and he's like, my daughter's been drowned, and Frankenstein, then they hear somebody saw him and they think he's upstairs. They go upstairs and then they check the cellar at the and then they hear Elizabeth scream, and they quick run in the Elizabeth, and the monster leaves. And so then the whole town gets together with the Burgermeister in charge. I love it. Just I think of whatever I think of the Burgomaster or whatever monster, Lionel Belmore's character. I always think of Santa Claus is coming to town, but he hates toys. No. Anyway, to organize a party.
Come on, man.
I love it. That's what I remember. So they get the torches, and then you see him walking down in the black and white in the village, the road here. They're leaving the archway, which is another cool thing I love about a lot of Europe like that. Like the towns they had moats around them, and they had one entrance in out.
Oh yeah.
So I like that, the architecture like that. So they leave. And then Henry leads one party. And then the Burgermeister, whatever, has one, and then another guy, and then so they're going through, they're searching through, they're going through the swamp, they're going, and they're going through the field, and then they get up to the rocks, and then they see Frankenstein, he's coming up behind the rocks there, and then he goes to the windmill, and he battles with Frankenstein, and then they they're up atop so after
they do something smart.
I love this. So the monster strangling Frankenstein throws him. So Frankenstein hits the windmill that's spinning, and he falls down. So then they just the villagers well, fuck this. They just throw the torch and let him burn. He's like, oh no! And you just need to see him. He's running wherever he goes. And he's like, fire! The monster is just and you're led to believe that he burned to death because he had nowhere to go. He couldn't get out. But obviously there's a bride of Frankenstein, so obviously he is alive.
Well, you can't kill money, so I mean that's
yeah, I know. But I mean, yeah. So imagine when I watch Bride of Frankenstein, maybe they'll explain. Remember, they won't. Who knows? It's Hollywood. They don't really explain things. But I like that the whole scene with the windmill. I kept thinking Evil Dead 2, or not Evil Dead 2, but Army of Darkness. The windmill scene. So every time I see stuff like that, and it's so cool that they filmed it, the rocks, everything. We got the dogs chasing after Frankenstein's monster. Like I said, it's a very captivating movie. The scenery with the torches, everybody walking around, people being strangled by the monster. He's got the giant hands. You see him there. He's like
man hands.
Oh my gosh, he's like Braun Strowman. He just strangles you. It's like yeah. So like I said, very well done, very atmospheric, very
70 minutes too. I think the runtime. It's not particularly long.
It's a little over an hour.
Yeah.
I found it through someone who had broadcasted on Twitch a year ago, so I was able to watch the video that way. But I mean, I'm thinking about I'm gonna watch this movie. It's just 93 years old, 1931, and it's so well done, and it's done better than most movies today.
Yeah, I think for what it is, it obviously hit a home run. It did very well, of course, financially speaking. I think importantly, you never know when you're doing something at the time, even if you think it's important, it may not have any impact. And sometimes you just go, well, we're just making another movie, and somehow it takes hold. And it's interesting because to me, I've mentioned before about how in the 90s, we tried making everybody that's supposed to be a bad guy sympathetic. We're supposed to learn how to psychoanalyze and understand the mind of a killer and somehow, say that it's okay or understand human nature in a different way. And that's just crap. There's good and there's bad and there's how you do it. And it doesn't mean good people don't do bad things or vice versa, but essentially there's evil. What's best about Frankenstein in this particular case, even if people have some disagreements with what the book may have been trying to say, is that An old friend of mine said, I think of him as a dog, not particularly intelligent relative to a human, capable of understanding some stuff on a basic level, learns through mimicking, like when he throws to Gerlin, which is unfortunate and does stuff. But what do you expect? It's a dumb fucking dog. You have to be smarter than a dog to train it. And most people aren't when it comes to dogs. Why? Because they don't know dogs' behavior. The point is you're making a monster. The whole reason why it's a monster is, because you, like I say, you can't screw with Mother Nature. And to your point, yeah, we didn't need to see the physics behind electricity and how it would bring it back and all these ideas. Mm-hmm. However, I will tell you that going into the 1800s with the Industrial Revolution, electricity, the idea of this concept called the ether, how things would travel, how they did it, quantum mechanics was still in its infancy, growing in particular power up to here, leading up to the atomic bomb. I'm not going to sit there and say these are sound scientific ideas, but it wouldn't be too much to kind of suggest that in some movie logic world, this could have been possible at that time. A lot of worlds still didn't have electricity then, only some civilized nations a lot too. So I wondered if people looked at that as the horror of how quickly we're advancing. We don't know what's going to come up, like with pollution or diseases that would rob people and stuff. And again, I'm not saying anything or making any judgments here. I just trying to think of what it would have been like 90 years ago when more than half the world lives on farms and all that. If you lived near a town or you went in to go see a thing and you saw how shocking it may have been at the time. I really don't know that. I don't know how controversial it was.
This wasn't America. This was Europe too. So it's like, so Europe apparently has the werewolves, it has Frankenstein, it has Dracula. They got a lot of monsters in Europe.
But I mentioned Disney before, and I mentioned things going to public domain. Another thing that happened with Disney, and generally speaking, is, and again, on the big picture culture, almost everybody has a similar type of, like, say, God or religion or story about the boogeyman or this, that. You just give them different names and maybe different stories and stuff. And there's just some aspects of human nature that culturally in that area have been around. So, of course, at the time, America took some of these ideas and did them in their own way. And now you have children's stories and all that, because as tools back in the day to keep people in line and society in line, you would have to have all of them. Hey, if you do this, it's going to be bad. And again, it's just interesting because I think everybody, no matter where they've grown up, have been exposed to some form of indoctrination culturally when it comes to, what it means to be a good person and a bad person. Yeah. So it's important that we don't understand Frankenstein, that Frankenstein can talk, that he's a smart guy, that he got a great brain or any of that. No, he's a monster, and shit, I probably shouldn't have done this, that's what the movie succeeds.
He's called the monster. He's not Frankenstein. Frankenstein is his creator.
Right, but the point being is that
everybody always says like the monster is named Frankenstein.
Well, even at the credits, when they say when they're rolling at the beginning, they put a question mark for the monster, because you're not supposed to know he's a man because he's not a man.
Well, you're not supposed to know that it's Boris Karloff till the end.
Yeah,
in the end credits.
This beast is not human. We cannot reason with it.
Yeah. But Boris Karloff is his smirk, just his facial expressions as Frankenstein is what really sold this movie.
Yes.
He made it more believable. And what's crazy about this is when we were watching the Hammer version of this, Victor Frankenstein was an evil son of a bitch. And the monster wasn't evil. The monster was a kind person. And he just wanted revenge on the creator. Where this is the opposite, where Frankenstein, was a decent human being for the most part. He just wanted to prove that he can do it. That that the monster.
I think he was barely functional at a living level. I think he was just literally.
We saw in the way he treated everybody else. Though he didn't treat Fritz bad. He treated right. He wasn't like a abusive person. Like I said, this was really cool. Hey, what's up, MK? I Franco and Aaron Eckert. Yeah, I watched it. It was okay. It's corny, but like I said, we're talking about this movie though. If you've seen this movie, MK,
this is the original deal. Yeah,
this is. Like I said, I've never seen this before. This was on Tubi, I think, a couple years ago.
And with October right around the corner, I think you're going to see a reshuffling on all the streaming channels, including Tubi, where these things pop up because of how popular they are at their time. I'm shocked if you can't find it. It may be in a public domain where you can go grab a copy off the Internet Archive or somewhere.
No, it's not.
It's not there?
I looked.
Okay.
Did you know that apparently in 2026, Universal has copyright for the Frankenstein Mega Sub only till 2026? And then they have to reapply for it.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah, and the thing you brought up with Hammer, I wanted to mention too, because again, thematically speaking, obviously you have to give the universe a lot of credit for whoever came up with the idea of saying, hey, let's take some of this public domain stuff out of some stuff that's considered classic literature in certain areas. And honestly, there's a difference between what we would call adult literature and what was called juvenile. And juvenile is not meant to be offensive. Like when I say books are technically were considered juvenile literature, they're written for a certain audience. Obviously, that's been around for a long time. But I mentioned Penny Dreadful earlier. Those were like dime store novels, so they were kind of considered inferior to more superior works like a Frankenstein or a Dracula, right? And so I think Universal did an excellent job with this idea. But Hammer Films kind of said, you know what? We've got a movie studio. We're British, so therefore we act better than anybody else, and we have even better set pieces. That's just me being British because I love Hammer horror, and I like the fact that what they did is they said, let's do the same thing, but let's gussy it up for this new generation for adults. Let's make it sexier, colorful, more attractive, gloomier, darker, and let's throw something in there called blood. I love Hammer Films and their own take on it. It is different, and they at the time Hammer was not afraid to push the boundaries of what was acceptable by British film standards at the time.
But I gotta say though, I did not like the casting of Vincent Price being, or no, it's not Vincent Price, but Christopher Lee being the Frankenstein, because he didn't even look like Frankenstein, other than he wore the same jacket or pants. That's about it.
But see, let me ask you, how do you know what he's supposed to look like? You're automatically comparing him to the first one, right?
Well, if you go from the source, and you do away from the source, they took greater liberties, probably because they didn't want to get sued. But like I said, this is the one I've always come to. Frankenstein, when he's ever depicted in the cartoons, he always has the bolts in his neck, like this.
Yeah. If the bolts always give it away, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the bolts, and it's the giant flat top head, the big head.
Yeah.
So, like I said, this is what I think of. So I always talk about when we're doing comic books, as like I said, I like all Batman, I like the series Batman. I do not like Batman 66. The Batman 66 equivalent of this would be the Monsters. But apparently both, they're popular. Monsters are popular too, but I look at this, this is like creepy. Like, this is like, can you imagine this being alone at night in this, in a small village back, back in the 1930s, and then you come across a werewolf or you come across Frankenstein, it's like, we're Dracula. Like, though, everybody's on a farm, but nobody has, some people, the rich people have electricity. Some people just have torches, and they have lanterns. It's like, as far as guns.
True.
You might have had a black powder gun,
It's true.
But, so it's like the thought of you could easily be murdered, by somebody, strangled by somebody, and it's harder to prove because they didn't have DNA, analysis of that. So it's like, like I said, this is, it's creepy too, because you're in Ye Olde Town. That's why when they actually redid this, and I'll tell you, the best reimagining of this movie is not Hammer. It is the Sean Bean TV show, the Frankenstein Chronicles.
I liked it a lot. I mean,
they talk more about.
So, I mean,
the reason I like it, because not only do you get Charles Dickens' character in there, but they also talk about how they have Mary Shelley, the girl who wrote the books up. She's in there too as well, and they talk about galvanization, science behind it, which the movies don't explain. They just have beakers and stuff. That's it. They don't tell you, So you're just supposed to expect. It's like, look, how do you bring people back to life? Well, use a lightning bolt.
Well, that's how they allegedly. I mean, people have different properties, and so eventually all get connected. And you talk about was it the Italian guy Volta who discovered, you put electricity through like a dead frog, it'll twitch. So there must be something in there, and that's when you get into capacitance and cells and stuff. So there are all these different people with different lines of thinking. And the thing is Britain. You could talk about their acting, their contribution to literature and those things over the years is a very long civilization and all that obviously some of us in America are based off of. But the thing too is because of the fact that they dominated a lot of the world there too. They were one of the first, and commercially, how do you say this, industrialized first world nations out there. So they had leading edge scientists and everything too. Germany, had it in chemistry particularly, but it's interesting because they definitely had a cornerstone on what they thought was going to be it. And so you definitely are always going to have this British sense of, well, we run the world because we're just better than everybody. We have the best scientists, the best this, that, and everything. And, not so fast, Britain.
Yeah. So apparently, the other thing too about this too, I'm reading up on IMDb about this, as the original ending, Frankenstein dies. So, and when they released these movies, people were confused about Bride of Frankenstein because they saw the original print where he dies. They're like, how the heck is he alive? How is Dr. Frankenstein alive? So they basically hastily shot this, at the end, after the movie was pretty much done, because the original theatrical release was with Frankenstein dying and the monster supposedly dying too.
Well, I mean, the question comes.
Honestly,
we talk about levels. This is a level. I can't think of off the top of my head hardly any other horror movies that are equally as good or do what this did. This is so significant in how it is. But I've said there's been movies that are really significant. They've contributed to the film industry or society. Doesn't mean they were good, but this one just kind of hits all of them. We don't really talk about it as much. We talk about the Wolfman maybe a little bit, but everybody talks about Dracula because it's sexy. Yeah. This is probably the least sexy out of all of them. Except maybe the Mummy. I don't know.
I don't know. Dracula's cool and all and stuff, the Van Helsing stuff, that stuff. But even that gets boring to me after a while. Like I said, Frankenstein, maybe it's because I have recently watching bias, but I do like it better than Dracula. So, but I gotta ask you, what will be a better ending? Frankenstein dying with his monster and paying for his sins for creating the thing, or what we saw, the happy ending where he lives and the monster simply dies? Well, obviously, I would have been much happier with the original ending where he dies.
Everybody dies.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, I mean, look, we're really watching a story, and it's probably the only flaw in this, and your question brings it up, is the fact that Dr. Frankenstein, not a good guy. Who do we really root for in here? Can't root for the monster. So we're really just kind of sitting back and going, I don't like any of these fuckers. Let me watch what happens. Yeah, they should all die. Screw it. So,
well,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm a base of what's her name? Elizabeth. Shouldn't she was innocent in all this.
True, but it doesn't mean she's a central character and we're rooting for her. She's just there.
I don't understand. Honestly, I thought when you heard her scream, I thought she was gonna die in this, because I was like, oh, because that sets off that'd be set off, because honestly that would have been much if she would have been killed by the monster. That would have set off a rage inside Henry. That Henry consumed by just revenge to kill this beast that he brought in, and that would have been a much better movie for me. But instead, it was he's like, oh, the monster's still alive. Oh crap, I gotta save face. Right. It's because obviously he learns that the other doctor died. And he's like, oh crap. So he has to do that, because I was gonna explain, why is there a dead doctor in your castle? It's but overall, like I said, the scenery, the way it's shot at nighttime, the darkness, was really cool. All in black and white. The way Boris Karloff he smirks a little bit. He's creepy, good glare, and then how he walks. He's got the platform shoes, and then just the way he walks, everything. He's like, oh, it's it's just the hands. Never does it with the hands, because can't do this. So he just has the hands like this the whole entire time. It's
to me, if the whole point in a horror movie is to say, hey, this is where you're screwing up. It's supposed to be scary. It's supposed to warn you about certain universal things, no pun intended there. And that is, like I say, don't fuck around with something you shouldn't be doing. That's one thing to experiment and do stuff. But this guy was no good. That was his folly. That's the lesson to be learned. If you don't learn that lesson from the movie, or shoot the movie in such a way to do that, and you focus on other things, that's where I think you failed. And this, to me, the movie succeeds. It's, look, we joke about the bolts in the neck, or the head, or the woman dressed up as young Frank, or as the Bride of Frankenstein, or all these goofy things that we've watered down over the years, only because at the beginning it was that good. You know what I'm saying? So I do have to give a lot of credit, because I never in my mind sit down and go, I'm really in the mood to watch me some Frankenstein. If I'm going to watch one of these older ones, it's going to be, I prefer something a little more silent or creepy, in terms of say a Dracula or even the Mummy. I prefer the Wolfman better. This is actually the least favorite of mine of those.
Oh, really?
I like it. I like them a lot. But
out of the four that I've watched, Creature of the Black Lagoon, and you have the Mummy, and you have the Wolfman, and then this, the Mummy. I can't stand the Mummy. It's boring. I watched it with Pixel, and it was like we watched it together for our Friday Night Flicks thing, and it was just so boring. I kept. I wanted to actually go just because I'm a big comic nerd fan. So every time I see like anything they do with the Mummy or Egyptian stuff, I think of Hawkman. We've been reading some older Golden Age books with Carter Hall and stuff. So I was like, oh, it'd be so much better if it was Hawkman instead of the Mummy. But the Mummy, yeah, I said I don't know if they redid the Mummy at all. Hammered probably did the Mummy, right? Or it was only Universal. Like I don't know about
Hammer
this.
did the Mummy as well.
Did they? Okay, I'll have to check that out too.
Versions. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, but like I said, I like this the better of them. I still haven't seen the Dracula. The Dracula will be on another poll because obviously I want to get it in there. We got about 4 weeks, and we're probably gonna record one of these offline, upload it on Halloween. That's my plan. That way you get enough Universal horror movies, plus whatever Pixel and Rob decide to do on their own, Well,
I'm looking forward to you putting the poll up there Tuesday night, so we'll be having to be another Universal rehash of some films that you select. I think that's great. Looking forward. We got a lot of votes on this one. Great film. I encourage everybody to see it because this is where it really technically all starts in terms of films for everything that would come afterwards, no matter whether it's comedy, a goof, a mix on it, or the Hammer versions, or other versions that may exist in Italy or Spain or other places in Europe too. Great film, definitely worth seeing. It's a nice way to start off the Halloween season.
I think I'm probably not alone because the Mummy bombed compared to this movie and Dracula. So I can understand why. That's probably why I don't like it as much because it just wasn't that great. But everybody likes everything differently. A lot of people didn't like Dracula Untold. I thought it was cool because it was more like a goth romance. Kind of like tragic. And setting up, would have been an awesome, beginning of the MonsterVerse, but they went away from that. We even got the guy from, that's what we're watching. That's what I was trying to think of the other show I was seeing with the man trying to be in control of everything. That was Rabbit Hole.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yes.
That was another one, yeah. With obviously the father in Rabbit Hole, I forgot what the actor's name was the original vampire monster in Dracula Untold. Leonard, something like it. Yeah. But very fantastic movie of this. I'm glad I watched it. Looking forward to whatever comes next. Tuesday is gonna be another review of Tulsa King, episode 3. No, is it 4? I get confused because one of them we did 2 together, and another I think so. This might be
the first 2. Then we did the next episode, so it'll be the episode after that. So it should be episode 4.
Okay. Yeah.
Now streaming on FX.
Right? Yeah. FX got a lot of good stuff. So, well, okay. With that being said, though, look for the poll. I'll probably drop it on Monday instead of Tuesday and just let it go the whole week.
You do that? That's what everybody decides.
Yep.
Great movie. Check it out, guys. Good night now.
Later, guys.